Good evening, everybody. I'd like to convene the December 3rd, 2013 meeting of the Lake Forest City Council. And considering we had no closed session tonight, there's no closed session to report. So, City Attorney, nothing.
That's right. Thank you, Mayor.
And open a public session and be led by me with an invocation. Those that would like to bow your head with me. Heavenly Father, we just thank you, Father, for the opportunity we have to live in this great nation. We thank you for this joyous time of year, Father, where there's a different spirit upon everybody, Father. We thank you for that spirit, and we thank you that your spirit, that spirit of friendliness and helpfulness, would pertain throughout the year here in Lake Forest. We thank you for blessing us as council members. Bless us with wisdom. Bless us with discernment. We thank you for the people of Lake Forest. We ask that you would protect them, prosper them, Father. We ask that you would help the businesses of Lake Forest to be fruitful, that they would be blessed being here, the gateway to South Orange County. We thank you for that. We thank you that we have a city council here that is going to be making a decision. We ask, Father, that you would give us discernment and wisdom as we select a new council member, and we pray that we would come together on that. And we just thank you for this meeting and peace that would be here, and we just give this all to you. Amen. And the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Councilman Dwight Robinson.
If you'd stand and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There's no presentations, but we do have a report from the El Toro Chargers.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
And your
This
name?
is Jeff Dominic from El Toro High School reporting on December 3rd, 2013. As fall sports come to an end, students prepare and look forward to cheering on our winter sports this coming season, which include wrestling, boys and girls basketball, boys and girls soccer, and girls water polo. Both basketball teams have already begun playing their preseason games, with the boys playing in their Ocean View tournament this week. Last night, they tied the school record of points scored in one game with an amazing 100 points. The girls soccer team plays its first home opener tonight, and the boys soccer team opens at home tomorrow night and will also play on Friday and Saturday in their Fresno tournament. Good luck to all winter sports, and we know you will make El Toro proud. Many more activities are beginning to start up this time of year at El Toro. The vocal music department, including concert choir, chorulistics, and sound station, prepare for their holiday concert. Also, the drama department is preparing for their holiday play, A Christmas Carol, this week. These events and many more at El Toro begin to heat up with the short 3 weeks of school left before the much-anticipated winter break. Last, but certainly not least, is the final tally for the El Toro canned food drive was counted the Friday before Thanksgiving break. After hours of lifting, carrying, loading, and calculating, a school total was finally added up. Despite a few fundraising problems and a low total just a few days before, ET was able to break its own record and demolish our goal of 65,000 cans. We brought in a total of 78,710 cans. This is an amazing accomplishment for our school. We were able to donate more than we ever have to a much-needed cause, and students were able to and proud and thankful as they spent their Thanksgiving break with friends and family. That's all for tonight. Thank you, and as always, go Chargers.
Go Chargers. And I just want to compliment El Toro, not only on their academics, but their athletic, but their heart and their willingness to help others and stuff. That was a great achievement, and we're very proud of the El Toro Chargers, and your school makes us proud, so thank you so much.
Thank you. And I would also like to ask the Mayor Pro Tem for her judgment of the winner of the dance competition during the celebration after the announcement of the new record. Who did you decide to be the winner of the freestyle dance? The boys or the girls?
Well, due to the fact that it was the very first dance, and due to the fact you had about 30 seconds to get prepared, and it was so close that I decided that it was a tie.
And so
Fair
I have
choice.
the girls and the boys, and next year, I'm not giving out the trophy this year. And you're going to have to pass it back and forth, whoever wins. But next year, I want to see such a distinction that I don't have such a hard decision. So next year, it will not be a tie ever again. That means you got a whole year to practice, and all of you that's moving on to college, you better help the ones that's going to be left behind, because I'm going to be really judging hard next year.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Could we pass these over? So remember, one goes to the girls and one goes to the boys.
Absolutely.
But both did a very good job.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
And for any of you that do not realize, there's a break in between while the classes are bringing their canned goods. So they're got to load up, and then we wait and get that counted and go on. So sometimes it can be a little boring. But they be playing music to keep everybody jazzed up. So I took a space where I was standing, and that was my space. If anybody come past, they had to dance to the music. So finally we got to where the girls were out dancing the boys, then the boys were out dancing the girls. So we decided to make it a contest. So this is the first year we've had a dance-off for the cans. So we'll see what you do next year. And break that record again. I want to see 80,000 next year.
Go Chargers. And with that, it brings us to the public comment. At this time, members of the public may address the City Council regarding any item within the subject matter of the City Council. No action may be taken on items not listed on the agenda unless authorized by law. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per person and an overall time limit of 30 minutes for the public comment portion of the agenda. Any person wishing to address the City Council on any matter, whether or not it appears on the agenda, is requested to complete a request to speak form to the door at the side and complete the form and submit it to our city staff up here at the front, Deborah Rose. Madam Clerk, do we have any requests to speak?
Yes, Your Honor, and I also have one request to reorder the agenda.
We will right after public comments, no?
Oh, okay. Gregory Sprague, followed by Marcia Rudolph.
Good evening. As usual, it's good to be here. As I approached tonight, I looked up and I saw the American flag outside. Unfortunately, it's displayed improperly. All you good Americans don't know how to do it yet. So my next issue I have is I was going east on Ridge Route last Wednesday. I saw two people on bicycles. I was driving rather fast, but I thought their shirts said sheriffs. I'm not sure. Do you have sheriffs on bicycles, Lieutenant? That, in my opinion, a total waste of $125,000. What do they do? How many widgets do they make a day? Do you know what a widget is? So we're done with that. Now I come to my neighbors. Not really neighbors, but they live in my track. I call the police, I complain. The police tell them, yeah, it's him over there at my address, and give my name. So I had this arrogant neighbor, has a BMW for 4 years. No license plates. But he keeps putting them pink tags in the window, them big little 6x6 pieces of paper with a month on it. He changes them every 3 months. If he can't afford a BMW, buy a Ford. Now he has a new car. He's had it 6 months. Nothing on it but paper plates. Hello, where are you? Come around. He needs a crutch. He's getting old. It's time to go. I'm all done. Thank you. Have a nice holiday.
Thank you.
And fix the flag, please.
We will.
Marcia Rudolph, followed by Heiko Peschel.
Good evening, one and all. I'm Marcia Rudolph. I've been on the Child Care and Development Planning Council of the County of Orange for now 13 years, and I delivered a copy of the annual report to our favorite people person over here, Mr. McGill. A couple of things came in. This is a report that is mandated by the state of California to be printed and reproduced to the various and sundry counties by the state. And it basically, this is the 2010 to 2015 Orange County Child Care Development Countywide Needs Assessment and Strategic Plan. And it's one of the things that if you're a member of the Child Care Council, you get to put your input on and be involved in. And there are 5 goals that are in the plan for this coming year. One is basically to build capacity. And building capacity when you're talking about children's issue means building or having more room in preschool, in schools, in after-school programs, to build a capacity so that the number of children who need those services or need those things are able to get in them. We then have other strategies to improve quality. And we all want to see that whatever happens to our children, they get a quality presentation. And sometimes that is, better said than done. Then also to increase community education. And that's one of the reasons why I stand up here and tell you that there is a Child Care and Development Planning Council, that it is important that we continue this. The Child Care Council has been in existence since the early 90s and will continue in existence, has got the full support of the Board of Education and the Board of Supervisors. In fact, I am placed in as a member of the Child Care Council by our supervisor, and it is a very special group to be part of, and you get to meet a lot of people who do wonderful things teaching our little people. So anyway, this is the Child Care Countywide Needs Assessment, and if there's anyone there in the audience who would like to get a copy of it, if you just put your name on a piece of paper and drop it by me, I'll see that you get it. Thank you very much. And can we say Merry Christmas
You may.
and Happy Hanukkah?
You may.
Take care.
Heiko Peschel, followed by Chuck Wykoff.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council people. How's it going, Scott? And city staff. Name is Heiko Peschel. I live in Foothill Ranch, and that's why I came here to talk. Subjects, and I'm going to try to make it quick: paving, lights, traffic enforcement, housing density, street sweeping, and Melrose. Paving. Bag Parkway from Portola on up has not been repaved since it was first done. Now, I noticed you guys did a really marvelous job of that whole area where you're going to put all that high-density housing, but you sort of stopped at Portola and didn't go past that. It would be nice if you took some of those dips and bumps and grasses out of Bag Parkway. Lights. We do enjoy having traffic lights up there. Most of the time, most of the people do actually observe them. Traffic enforcement. Because ours is a relatively quiet and mellow neighborhood, we don't see a lot of traffic enforcement. Once in a while, the chief of police sends his troops up and they come up and say hi. They do a marvelous job on vacation checks. They took care of us last month, for which we're very happy. But a little better presence once in a while, especially on the little back residential streets that rarely ever get to see anyone. Question on street sweeping. Why does the street sweeper have to do residential at 7:30 in the morning? Why can't they do industrial and commercial in the early morning and do the residential later in the morning when the cars are all gone? Because at 7:30 in the morning, most of the folks are still home, and the street sweeper has to go around all the cars that are parked on the street instead of the garage or the driveway. Last but not least, Melrose. It's been almost 25 years since Melrose was initiated. From what I can read of the requirements, there's only one thing we're lacking, and that's a substation for the sheriffs. I don't know whether the sheriff has any substations planned either in our area or next door in Portola Hills, but if they do, I think they should get the plans in quick and do it, because what we're working hard on is getting rid of Melrose in due time. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Chuck Wykoff, followed by Nancy Cagley.
Good evening. My name is Chuck Wykoff. I am a resident and property owner here in Lake Forest, have been since July of 2010. I'm here to speak tonight about a property owner next door to us who has been operating an illegal vacation rental home business since we've lived here, a little over 3 years that we know of. I brought this to the attention of code enforcement back in June of this year, and I want to really express my appreciation for the actions that code enforcement has taken on this. They've submitted letters to this property owner to cease and desist the operation. They did one in June, giving the owner plenty of time to stop the activity till about the end of August. The owner decided not to stop renting the property. A second letter was issued from code enforcement in September, could have been October, I don't recall, I have to check it out, but the owner defied that, and now it has gone, as of November 18th, it was referred to the city attorney, which I guess is kind of escalating up the ladder. So again, I really appreciate the city's involvement in this thus far, but all indications with this property owner is that they are not going to stop this activity. And my concern moving forward is that I want to make sure that, since this is clearly illegal, all of the statutes are documented here, I want to make sure that this is handled in a timely fashion. I mean, we've been putting up with this for literally over 3 years, but it's kind of hitting a critical mass now. There's been illegal drug use there. They woke us up with a party that was going on at about 1:15 in the morning about 2 to 3 weeks ago. It's a nuisance in a high-density area, bedroom community like we live in. And so, again, I'm looking forward to this kind of keeping the pressure on, so to speak, to bring this illegal activity, to force them to cease and desist. My concern is that last week the house was rented. This week it's not. If I look at the calendar where it's advertised on vrbo.com, I see that it is booked all the way out through April, okay, by weekly renters. My concern is that this person could stop for a couple of weeks, kind of get the heat off of the city attorney, but then start renting it again. So again, I just want to make sure that we follow through and do the right things to stop this illegal activity.
On that point, we all got memos on that, and I read it thoroughly today, and our city attorney has been on top of this, and we will see this through. And so right now, as you said, that they have the rented out till a few months here, but we are going to see this through, and we will stay on top of it. You'll see that we're committed to the ordinance that are before us.
Great. We appreciate that, and
All right.
I thank you very much.
Thank you. Happy holidays to
Okay,
you.
thank you. Happy holidays to you as well.
Nancy Cagley.
Good evening. I don't come here for a complaint, but to tell you of a wonderful opportunity. I come to you as president of the Women's Club, the Sun and Sail Women's Club in Lake Forest, and we are having a wonderful party on New Year's Eve. This is a sit-down dinner. It is a comedy show, a Las Vegas entertainer, Jason Chase. He's a clean comedian. He sings, he plays instruments. We had him in September, and he was wonderful. So for $45, this is a great way to spend New Year's Eve, and it will benefit the Salvation Army. And I just want to make sure our community knew what a wonderful affair this will be.
Awesome.
You're invited.
Thank you so much.
Merry Christmas.
And thank you for doing that. And a Happy New Year.
We've had no further requests.
Okay, and with that, we have a special guest that's flown down and has a flight to catch, and so I make a request that we change the order and bring forth item number 9, legislative platform, to us now.
Discussion item, agenda item 9, 2014 legislative platform, submitted by city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. I'm going to defer to Carlo Tomaino along with our consultant, David Jones.
Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council, the draft legislative platform is a prospective document that establishes the city's legislative priorities for the ensuing year and serves as a foundation for advocacy efforts at the federal, state, and local levels. The platform is comprised of elements derived from the city's past experience with certain legislative issues, certainly including legislative positions taken by the City Council, and is further defined by policy positions taken by the city's legislative advocacy partners, chiefly the League and the ACCOC. In addition, the city works with its legislative consulting firm, Emanuels, Jones & Associates, to incorporate into the platform emerging issues that may be of importance to the city. In this way, the platform presented before you tonight is intended to capture the city's historical policy positions along with new policy areas to prepare the city for any challenges that may arise during the legislative cycle. With us tonight is the principal of EGA, David Jones, who will provide the City Council with a preview of the 2014 legislative year and discuss some of these emerging issues with the Council. Of course, staff, along with David Jones, are prepared to answer any questions that you may have for us this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. It's great to be here. First, I'd like to give you the good news. It's always good to start with the good news. And the news is the legislature is out of session until January 6th, so you can have a safe, happy holiday season inclusively without their presence. I'd like to thank you for accommodating my schedule. I do appreciate that. And also would like to give special thanks to your staff. We've worked with your staff for years, and they're, as you know, they're very diligent, professional, and they're very sharp and very great to work for. For those that don't know our firm, we've been around for 25 years, established by Ken Emanuels. We have a staff of 4. We represent 16 clients, mainly local governments. We have 2 nonprofit clients that we do work for. Recently, we had, in addition to our firm, Kira Emanuels Ross joined our firm. She used to work for the League, and she is the daughter of the founder of the firm, Ken Emanuels. So she brings experience in the, she's very knowledgeable in the energy, environment, planning, and water world. So that's a great thing for us. I'll give you an overview of Sacramento. Sacramento has changed dramatically in the last couple of election cycles. A couple of things that have shifted is we have had a new citizens commission drawing legislative districts. That has resulted in a very different makeup in the legislature. Those maps have resulted in almost a 2/3 majority in both houses for Democrats, and we're going to bounce back and forth close to that for the discernible future. Term limits were changed, so now members that are elected can be there for 12 years rather than the 6 years and the 8 years. So we're hopefully going to have some more stability in the chairs and the leadership of the legislature, and that may be somewhat helpful. The top 2 primary has come to be, so that has changed the dynamics. Competition amongst Democrat against Democrat in certain races and Republican against Republican in certain races also changed the behavior in Sacramento. And probably the most significant for us is the majority vote budget was passed with Prop 26. And with that, we have had an on-time budget ever since. June 15th is when the budget's due, and I foresee we'll have on-time budgets for the future as we go. By the way, revenues to date for the state of Sacramento, the state is about $500 million above the forecast. So the state is in a relatively very healthy condition, and surpluses are anticipated for the years to come. My remarks will look on kind of the high or low lights from this last year, and then I'll move to the prognostications for next year. So as you know, we're in the middle of a 2-year session. The last year is up. We've got this little break here for the holidays. As you probably imagine, we play a lot of defense in Sacramento. There are a lot of crazy ideas that come from all those legislators, and so we spend a lot of our time trying to keep bad things from happening to you. And I'll highlight a couple of things we were successful in stopping that you had positions on. AB 5, which would have created the Homeless Bill of Rights, which, as it sounds, nobody's for homelessness. It had some crazy provisions in there for us that would have required us to have city maintain 24-hour sanitation facilities that we would have had to mandate it to have us maintain. It also would allow homeless folks to camp on any public property, including parks or sidewalks in front of local businesses. So we were pleased that that bill was stopped, and we were able to stop that one from going forward. We also stopped AB 22, which was a bill dealing with sidewalk liability, really shifted a lot of liability to cities away from property owners, so that was a very distressful bill, and we were able to stop that as well. The other bill that was of note was a bill dealing with medical marijuana by Tom Amiano. It would have really changed the regulation and taking this, what we think is a local issue of zoning, and put that at the state level. So the good news is we did stop that bill. The bad news is it's most likely coming back, so we'll have to be dealing with that again this next session. There was also a bill targeting Walmarts and big box stores, that if you wanted to have one, you had to go through a couple of extra significant hoops as far as having an economic environmental impact report, very much violating the policy of local control. And so we were able to stop that bill, and that bill, again, is one of them that may be coming back again. One of the most troubling bills that you opposed that was, unfortunately, did go all the way through the policy and did get signed by the governor was SB 7. That bill targeted charter cities that refused to pay prevailing wage. It's not necessarily the fact that it was prevailing wage, but the precedent that was set to saying if the city didn't pay prevailing wage for 2 years, you'd be barred from all state funding. So that tool could be used for any issue in Sacramento in the future to say they don't like the way your law enforcement behaves, they could make you do something, or you can forgo all state funding for 2 years. So it's a very significant precedent that we're very concerned about, that's going to be returning in labor and environmental areas for new mandates to get around our current protection against mandates. One of the most significant things we did for you last year, and we will continue to work on, is redevelopment dissolution. And we were able to assist your staff with too many trips to Sacramento. I know they enjoy coming to Sacramento every time, but able to get the $12 million of certificates of participation approved, so that can go forward. But we still have significant work to do on redevelopment dissolution. We will continue to work very closely with your staff and making sure that we get some resolution of some of that issue for us going forward. Looking ahead, the big issue in the last month or so is there's an FBI scandal, sting on a state senator. That's cast a significant pall over the building, and we don't know at this point how far that corruption scandal will go, but that certainly is going to make everybody quite nervous in the building on where we go from here. Next issue that I think is going to be of interest to you is there was a court order. As you're probably aware, the governor tried to get an extension from the three-judge panel on realignment. He failed to get, he got an extension until February, but the state is required to release another 9,600 inmates from state facilities to local incarceration or supervision. So that is going to be job number one in January, is looking at how do we roll out those 9,000 inmates and what that impact will be. Your platform also asked us to continue to look at finding another tool for redevelopment, a replacement tool, Redevelopment 2.1. And I'd have to say, from my conversations with the governor's office, it's going to be very, very difficult to get him to turn around on looking at that. There are, last count, 157 lawsuits pending against the state for the way that they behaved with dissolution. And the governor's position, as articulated by his staff, is like, until we get those substantially resolved, I'm not going to entertain a new tool to overlay on this malaise of litigation. So we'll work on that, but that's going to be a very tough hill to climb. I know that there are members of the legislature, including the pro tem Darrell Steinberg, who's very unhappy with the governor in saying he's worked very hard on legislation, IFD legislation, other redevelopment legislation. The governor's just said no, I'm not interested in that. So there may be some insurrection in January, but we'll have to see if that's going to come to fruition. Another issue would be placing a constitutional amendment on the ballot for local governments to have like schools, a 55% vote for getting new revenue for infrastructure. So there are probably 7 or 8 of these different constitutional amendments, one for libraries, one for parks, one for transit, affordable housing. We think this summer there'll be a serious discussion about what the legislature will consider putting forward for the November ballot. So that'll be something we'll be paying attention to for you. Other questions for the November ballot. The water bond is the other issue that's on the November ballot. It's at $11 billion. All the polling says that that's going to fail if it's at $11 billion. So the legislature is looking at different aspects of the water bond, different scaled-back versions. There may be something for stormwater. There may be some other things that might be in there that we may be able to avail ourselves of. So we'll watch that. Again, that would be a question answered in summer. CEQA reform, still an issue on your agenda. There was only a minor bill of CEQA passed that we happened to carry for the city of Sacramento. We got an exemption for them to build the Kings Arena, to retain them. The business community and you are still looking for a more holistic reform of CEQA, so that will be on our agenda as far as following that. The legislature will look at a plastic bag ban. That issue is floating around. That will preempt local authority. And the other thing I think that will be of interest to you is there'll be a discussion about legislation giving local governments more authority over community care facilities, otherwise known as group homes. Newport Beach and some others, the League will be sponsoring legislation, so that will keep you apprised as that moves through the process. This is an election year, as you know, and that always makes everything wacky in Sacramento. So with that, I'd be happy to answer questions, and I appreciate you accommodating my schedule.
I'll open it up to council.
Thanks for coming down. Really appreciate it. It was a pleasure meeting you, and I appreciate everything that you do. I've heard a lot of good things from staff about how you've been able to help with the redevelopment agency dissolution and the Department of Finance making sure that we're getting the money that we need, that we should be getting. So I really appreciate that. A few things that I think a lot of what you talked about, there's a few new faces up here, that, in the last few years, but I think that at least I agree with the focus that you have right now. I think a lot of it comes down to local control. That's really important for us. You've mentioned that quite a few times, and that continues to be something that's important for me as well. Another thing that's important for me is making sure that we can maintain, I'll call it tax base, the revenue to do what we do. And that's a really big issue for me. The dissolution of redevelopment agencies, what goes on with, car taxes, how the state keeps trying to take more and more, not only control, but also some of the money that we're sending up there. It's just not coming back. And, I've said it a number of times, but, we're a donor county, we're a donor city. And, that's really important that, for me, that we're focusing on trying to see how we can get more of those services back. I'm really frustrated with the legislature. I was hoping that with term limits being enacted a number of years ago, that we'd start to see more turnover, and we'd see, which we have clearly, but we'd see people who just a few years ago were sitting in seats like this. They were on city councils and school boards and so forth, and they weren't sitting in Sacramento for 30 years and becoming ingrained in the system. So it's frustrating when they leave this seat, and they probably have that same feeling that I have about local control, making sure that we can keep a good solid revenue base to provide the services that our residents expect, and then they go up there and it's like they do a 180.
It's called domeitis. When you get into the dome.
Incredibly frustrating. So, do you see any hope of that changing with some of these new, changes in the electoral process, right? Well, with open primaries and a little bit longer tenure as well, but not significantly longer.
I do. I think that there are members that came up there this time that have 12 years, and we've told them, you are not beholden to leadership. You're here for 12 years. The speaker is termed out, so you don't necessarily have to listen to what the speaker is going to say, because he's going to be on in a year. So that is resonating with some of the newer members that have coming, is realizing, yes, you've got 12 years, you've got to look at yourself in the mirror. You're not looking for the next spot, and so you're not necessarily as beholden to leadership as others had been, because in order to take that next jump, you needed the endorsement. So I am hopeful that that term limit change, which is counterintuitive to say, we're going to give you, actually they got less time. Under past term limits, they got 14 years, and now they'll have 12. So new members will have 2 yet less years, but they can serve it in a single house if they want. So I am hopeful that that change, maybe with the top two primary, will make somewhat of a more conciliatory, longer-term thinking legislature, rather than where's my next jump. So I'm somewhat hopeful that we'll see something. I didn't see it this year. I thought maybe this year we've got brand new members, people who were legislative leadership in the League of California Cities, and they voted lockstep with their party. So we'll see. But I think there is some hope that we'll have a little bit more independent thought when people are going to be there for longer and don't have to be as dependent on leadership.
I'm also encouraged by the fact that they have the opportunity to be there longer, but at the same time, if you've been in there for one term and people don't like how you're doing your job, if you're only going to be there for 3 terms, a lot of potential challengers would say, maybe I'll just sit it out. It's pretty difficult to run against an incumbent. But when you're saying 12 years, that's a long time to wait if you think the guy's doing a horrible job or gal's doing a horrible job in the first term. You might be more likely to challenge them, and especially with this open primary concept where, in safe seats, you get into that general election runoff, and, who knows what will happen at that point.
There's a new definition of safe.
Yeah.
Whether you're worried about the primary or the general, it's
exactly.
The dynamics change, so we'll see.
One of the things that I'm real concerned about is the state of California just came out with their budget analysis, and they say they have a surplus. And what the legislator is going to do with a supermajority up in the House, and saying that they don't seem to think that they have bills that they have not accounted for on unfunded mandates. Where do you say they're going with that?
Well, I think I'm somewhat hopeful that we do have a new sheriff in town, and he's called the governor. And there's a lot of things I didn't like that the governor did, eliminating redevelopment and enterprise zones. But I do think the governor is dead serious about not restoring spending to the levels that we've had before. So I think as far as honestly staying on the hard path about not adding back significant numbers of programs that the legislature dearly would like to do with 2/3 majority to say let's add more of this program back. I think he's going to stick to his guns and keep the spending to a minimum.
So we've all been reading about high-speed rail, the 68 million to 100 million
billion.
Is it dead, or where do you see the governor going with that?
Well, the governor's I think the governor's looking at legacy, and I think there are 2 legacy projects that he's got on his plate, and he's not sure he can get both. One is the Twin Tunnels, is getting the conveyance to Southern California, and the other is high-speed rail. And I think it's going to be hard for him to get both. So I think at this point, high-speed rail has some legal challenges, but I think it's already started. And I think the date for the BDCP, the Bay Delta Conservation Plan, comes out on the 13th of December. So the 27,000-page EIR on the Twin Tunnels is delivered on Friday the 13th, which is an apt day. And I think that's going to be very, very challenging once that document hits the road. So I think he's going to have to choose where he puts his priority. And I think my guess is, depending on he's really going to have to gauge how much opposition there is to the Twin Tunnels to see which has the more viable chance.
Okay. And last but not least, obviously we all are advocates of local control, and we're fiscally conservative in our city and making sure that we don't spend more than we bring in and that we have our reserves. Sacramento doesn't seem to believe in reserves. On that, do you see any movement in the legislators talking about ways that they can go after our local bank accounts? Because they did it with Prop 22, and they did it with redevelopment agencies, thinking they were going to fill their coffers.
I guess, Mr. Mayor, the only dark good news is there's not much for them left to take. The only thing we have left that the state gives us is the COPS program, which is constitutionally protected, and that's really pennies on the dollar compared to what else we have. So I guess, we've lost the VLF. The governor swept that last year, what was remaining of that. So, you never underestimate the creativity of Sacramento, and they've got ways of undermining our taxes. But right now, I think there's nothing glaring out there that they would go after, and it would be pretty difficult for them, sitting on a surplus, for them to come after a local revenue source at this point. So I think in the short term, I think we're in pretty good shape to maintain what we have. In the long term, you never underestimate the creativity of Sacramento.
Now, we as a city haven't just jumped in on this, but the fact is that there is a push to hot lane or toll our carpool lanes, and something that is going to be coming up in to the local municipalities, and those of them along the 405 are already in this battle, but something that we'll be probably diving into later on. But I want to thank you for coming down, and I hope you have a great flight back home. And I'm going to pass it on to my other council members.
Thank you very much.
I just want to quickly say thank you very much for coming down here. Pleasure meeting you in person, and thank you for all the knowledge and information Thanks for taking care of us up there.
You're most welcome. I really appreciate working with your staff and with your team.
We appreciate you, sir. Thank you.
I'll be as quick as I can, but as you know, I need answers on some of these things. Number one, on the hotline, on the hot lanes, some of those has already been paid for by the taxpayers, and then they're going to switch and make us repay. So that's something I'd like to see you look into. Los Angeles has taken the carpool lane and turned it into a paid lane that was paid for many years ago. I think it's a grave injustice to taxpayers, and we need to see if there isn't any legislation pending, then we need to see about creating some. Also, on the 9,000 inmates that's going to be released, they did not give us a continuing fund source for it to begin with. They gave us a one-time fund source, and then it has impacted the communities throughout the state. And I want to know where that little extra money, that's a place they can put it, because it's going to impact us locally by taking in those inmates, and they're not giving us enough money to do what needs to be done, because mental health has to weigh in very heavily, because a large percentage in the 90 percentile do need mental health. So I want to make sure that that's put on the list also. On the redevelopment, they're talking about the surplus they found for others, but where's the surplus on the monies? How come they haven't factored in the surplus in return, the drops, instead of keeping our money and not allowing us to claim the administrative costs and other things that we have purchased, and they've taken the money and distributed. One of the things they're doing is paying back the school districts with the money that they borrowed that they're supposed to be paying out of their pocket, instead of dissolving our redevelopment to pay it. And on top of that, I get involved in these different things. So this is how we keep our local control, by being involved. The other thing is, I am concerned about the water bond, and if you can get us any information on that. And the plastic bags say it started in one place and it's kind of spreading throughout the state. I would not like to see a mandate on that. I believe that is infringing upon our local control. Excuse me, one of our cities here within our county pushed it very heavily, the same as the fire pits and stuff. Some city, they have a problem, they push it and they want it statewide. I don't believe that there's ever a time that the state should take and put mandates on us that's not directly affecting us on a much larger basis, that is causing a statewide issue, and this is not. It's very narrow and very finite to certain cities that their council has a bug and they're running awry with it. I do not want to see that become a mandate in any kind of way. It should not, and it should stay in their own cities and not try to do it throughout the state. Last but not least, or maybe, on the prevailing wage issues, they're having a lot of problems with that and want to expand it a lot of different ways. I feel that you're really going to need to keep a really close watch on it, because when I was up up to Sacramento last time through the Administration Policy Committee, we discussed it in depth, and we did have a representative, and what they were selling we're not buying. So make sure that we don't even put a bid on it, okay? And outside of that, when you get more information about the FBI thing, I would like you to pass that on too.
Will do.
Thank you. You always do an excellent job. I'll see you soon.
We'll see you all soon. Thank you very much for your indulgence, for putting me close.
All right, have a safe flight. Hope you make the airport. Well, at that time, it brings us to the Warrant Registry. All
Mayor?
matters.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, back on number 9, just quickly, there was a recommended action by staff that the council would adopt the 2014 legislative platform. So if you're so inclined, that would be our recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Housekeeping there. Thank you. Okay, at this time, it brings us to the Warrant Registry consent calendar. All matters on the Warrant Registry are considered routine and will be enacted by one vote. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a member of the City Council, the public, or staff requests specific items to be removed from the Warrant Registry for separate action. Madam Clerk, have there been any requests to remove any items from the Warrant Registry?
No, Your Honor.
Okay.
There's one there's one item I need to abstain from. I would like to abstain from the $625 payment to Cummins and White. I would like to record my abstention, please.
And I'll receive motion for the rest.
Oh, can I, Mayor and Mr. Nick, could I just footnote that?
Please.
The invoice in question relates to a lawsuit that was filed prior to Mr. Nick's tenure on the council. The lawsuit doesn't seek money damages. It's a writ of mandate. But in an abundance of caution, our advice to him has been to disclose that and abstain as he's done. But I just wanted to add that footnote to indicate that it's technically not about money as regarding the complaint.
There's a motion made.
Thank you, sir.
Second.
Move the item.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And with that noted exception, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Now, at this time, it brings us to consent calendars, miscellaneous, 2 through 8. All matters listed on the consent calendar are considered routine and will be enacted by one vote. There will be no separate action or discussion of these items unless a member of the council, the public, or staff. Specific items are removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Madam Clerk, have there been any requests?
We've had no requests.
I'd like to make an abstention from item number 7. It's the ADA ramps. They've been putting ADA ramps, if many of you have seen. I've got one that's been put in close to my house, so I've got to abstain from that since I use those ADA ramps.
I'd like to pull item 5.
I'd like to pull item 3.
Item 5 and 3, please. Pulled. I entertain motions for the...
Move the balance.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Agenda item 3, minutes of the regular meeting of the City Council held on November 5, 2013, submitted by City Clerk and removed from the consent calendar by Mayor Pro Tem McCullough.
Yes, I removed this because I asked for an excused absence from the closed session, and it does not list that.
We can make that amendment. Yeah, I know this is where I'm doing it.
So I'll move the item with the amendment made. Thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Agenda item 5, city financial reports, quarter ended June 30, 2013, submitted by the Director of Finance, City Treasurer, and removed from the consent calendar by Councilmember Robinson.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring this up, call it to the attention of the public. Absolutely. Those of you in the audience that are here, I really appreciate the time that you spend coming to watch us do what we do. I wanted to pull this because basically this just talks about not only our ending quarter as of June 30th, but also the fiscal year 2012 to 13. And we talk a lot about trying to be fiscally responsible. We talk about local control. We talk about things of that nature. We as a city, we really focus on that. And so I just wanted to commend the city manager, also commend the department directors for just being really good stewards of people's money. When you look at this year's budget, we had a revised estimate of revenues of $36.6 million for fiscal year 2012-13 operating budget. We came in a little bit short, but that was because we actually adjusted up about $1 million a few months ago. So we were above our initial estimate and below a little bit on the revised. But we actually spent about $2.5 million less than what our revenues were that we generated. So that just, again, I want to commend the staff for helping us run a very fiscally prudent city. And when we talk about all the things that we're trying to do here, this is where it all gets spent. This is the money that we have to work from. And so when the staff is doing their job and when we're doing our job as well as council members, it benefits the city. It helps provide all those services and not have a shortfall like Sacramento typically does. They get their little, and it's little in the grand scheme of things. They have their $500 million surplus. Sounds like a lot of money, but when you look at that total budget, it's nothing compared to our $2.5 million that we've saved here. So, and the other thing that there's a number of things you could probably look at this online, and if you call the city clerk's office, I'm sure they could tell you where to go to actually look at some of the details that we're looking at. But one thing that I wanted to call to your attention is the city council expenses itself. And, if we're going to be talking about fiscal responsibility, it needs to start with us, ourselves. There's a budget for the city council for the pay that council members receive, for travel expenses, so on and so forth. And 100% that you have to work with throughout the year, we were at 76%. And there's a few of us, not everybody, and everyone has their own philosophy, but there's a few of us that don't expense for any travel or any other expenses. Others do, and they're very prudent about the travel and expenses that they have when they're working on behalf of the residents of Lake Forest. But it really starts with us. If we're not focusing on that, then how can we expect the department heads and the city manager to be focusing on that? So I just, not to toot everybody's your horns up here, but I just want to commend my colleagues as well for being very prudent with the spending. And with that said, I'll move the item.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 With that brings us to discussion items. And we already had discussion item number 9, legislative platform. So we'll move right to item number 10.
Item 10, discussion and determination of applicant interview process for city council candidates, submitted by city clerk.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, this evening, staff is seeking council direction as it relates to fundamentally, I think, 3 particular requirements related to the potential appointment of a new member. It would be the date, the time, and the method that the council would care to follow in filling that vacancy. By method, it is 3 potential ways by which to conduct those interviews. We identified those for you in your report. One was a comprehensive manner in which you would interview all candidates. Another was to do like a single elimination process, and the other was more of a comprehensive way that we looked at. So certainly one of those 3 are very viable. There may be others that the council could consider that you may want to talk about, but fundamentally, those are the 3 that we identified in very simplistic terms. Your absolute deadline is December 14th, so we would encourage council to set a couple of special meetings. If it were to take that, maybe one next week sometime. So looking at the calendar, staff would recommend that you focus on the 10th or the 11th of next week, December. And clearly, the other issue, I guess, is the amount of time that it might take to conduct those interviews and other details as it relate to the balloting itself. We've identified all those in the staff report. We'd be glad to respond to any questions that council may have, but fundamentally at this point, we're seeking your guidance as it relates to at least those 3 major items.
Thank you for that report, City Manager. I feel that considering we have 12 very qualified candidates and citizens that are willing to serve on the City Council, I think it's only right that maybe we do an interview process with all 12, reminding about maybe the time for interview. We've got a very extensive question and answer sheets. The questions that were asked from the council, we've got in writing, and then everybody gave a detailed resume and a candidate statement. So we've got background on everybody, but I feel, I just feel, and council, please chime in. I feel everybody should be heard. And so many of you that are out there now and that are here, I either know or have seen through the city somewhere. So I think that coming before us and making your case, but I know that time is of of some concern because we have so many of them. If you can maybe categorize how much time can we get and what can we get out of it in a certain amount of time?
Well, Mr. Members of the Council, if, for example, if you were to do a interview on 15-minute increments, the process would probably take you about 4 hours in order to get accomplished. If you want to spend a lot more time per candidate, I think you'd probably need to consider holding 2 meetings and splitting the interviews. If you want to get it all done in one evening so that you're considering everybody at that time, then you'd want to go to a shorter period. If you started at 5:30 in the evening, closed session starts at 5:30 sometimes, so that's not necessarily, I'd say, foreign to any of us in that respect. You know, you could probably get done as long as you stay pretty true to about a 15, 20-minute turn. If you allowed candidates 5 minutes to say what they wanted to, that's not too dissimilar to what we do with Planning Commission candidates. If you kept your time clearly to 10 to 15 minutes, then you'd probably be able to get it done in one evening. If you had no time limit on this, I'm not sure you'd be able to get through it all. Obviously, in one evening, and 2 might be difficult, so you'd have to be committing to many more sessions if you want to make the deadline by December 14th. So you'd want to take those variables into mind, I think, as you're moving through in order to vet. Now, you've asked all of the candidates questions in writing, and they've submitted their answers to you. To what degree any and all of you have need to follow up on those clearly, or if there's other questions that you had we're not aware of. But those are issues that you want to be considering here in terms of the length of time per interview, and trying to stay, I'd say, as committed to that as possible, knowing that it may be a little over on one, a little under on another interview, for example. But if you do go more than one evening, then you probably should start like next Tuesday night and get the process going.
Is there a meeting next Tuesday night here in Chamber?
No, there is not. There's a planning, is it planning?
On Thursday.
On Thursday. So that's why we were suggesting if you wanted to do one evening, you could do it Tuesday or Wednesday. If you need to take 2 meetings, then you probably don't have a choice. You'd want to go Tuesday and Wednesday both.
And how crucial this is really for the city. Those of you that haven't read, or many of you already know, that a cost of a special election is going to be anywhere from $168,000 to $190,000. I'd like to, just in case, is there any way that if we didn't come together in agreement on the first night, could we do a second night, or is that outside of the realm of where we are?
I think the one process we talked about with the city attorney and city clerk was that you'd be holding a special meeting, but for the first time, but you could continue that special meeting. So if you met Tuesday night, you were not able to get your work complete, you would just continue that special meeting to the next night and come back and either conduct additional interviews or whatever point you are in the process.
Now, I see that the way we have it down here, we have one that's a process of elimination, or with 12 candidates. Is it, please, council, is it viable? I mean, maybe just keep voting until we come together and agree. Now, according to the rules, we need 3 of us to come together in agreement.
It would take 3 members of the council voting for a particular candidate for that individual to be appointed.
I'm not willing to keep voting and voting and voting, because you could get all types of mix. I feel that we do need to have an elimination process, and I believe after we voted 2 or 3 times, we've kind of beat that horse to death. If we're voting for the same thing, everybody's holding true to their same vote. That doesn't make sense to just keep voting and voting, and you're going to keep getting the same answer. So we then need to regroup and decide what we're going to do after that. or if you're going to throw some people back in or switch or something of that nature, because if each one of us have a person that we're going to vote for, and we vote for that same person 3 times, then why are you going to keep voting? That don't make sense. Or if one person changed and we get a 2-1-1, a 2-1-1, I mean, we could be here for days and still miss our date and have to go to vote. So we're going to have something that's going to give us a cutoff, or we regroup and start over, or take another mix or something. We can't just stay up here and keep voting and voting. We have to realize we have to have 3 votes in order to get a person in. For me, myself, people soliciting me, people calling me, or trying to influence me on who they want, or any of that stuff, it doesn't work. I won't hold it against them, but it sure is not helping them, because I'm going to do my homework, and I'm going to make my decision. But if we're going to keep voting, we're going to get tired, and somebody's going to cave in and vote for somebody they don't want to vote for because they're tired and want to go home. See, so that don't make sense. I've seen it on many meetings. So we're going to need a process where after we vote 2-3 times, then what do we do from that process? Where do we go? Do we go back into the pool to get a different mix, or do we take and regroup, or what need more answers? We need to have something that's going to give us a cutoff and it's going to bring us out one person. Otherwise, might as well just go ahead to vote, and that's a lot of money. But if you don't have a process, you're going to go vote on and on and on. I've seen this happen on many committees.
Councilman Robinson.
Well, just to start with, I mean, my preference is that we start on Tuesday so that we give ourselves as much time as possible to deal with this. I think that the more we communicate the possibility of continued meetings, the better, just so that the public knows what to expect. That's really important. I want there to be as much transparency as possible. With respect to the votes, I guess maybe if the city clerk could just do a little bit of research and let us know maybe this year how many votes we went on certain commissioners. That might be a good guideline to work from. So, like, I know that whatever that longest period was, so if it was 4 or 5 votes or 2 or 3, and then at least there's something that we've already had this year that we've kind of worked from, and we did come to some agreement at some point, and that might be a good number to look at. So I don't know what it is, but I guess it's more than 2 and fewer than 5, but that's just from my recollection from earlier this year. 12's kind of, it's a little borderline because it will be a long meeting. One thing I'm always concerned of is that this in business as well as in my position here, the longer the meeting goes, sometimes the quality of decision making starts to diminish, and so that's something that I want to be really cognizant of. But at the same time, I feel like we have 12 people. Stop me if I go too far, Mr. City Attorney. We have 12 people. On paper, I could potentially break it up into tiers here, but at the same time, I haven't had a chance to actually hear verbally from someone. Some people are much better at putting themselves down on paper. Some are much better orators. So from that perspective, I'd really like to hear from all 12 because I think that I'll get a better representation of who each candidate is and what they have to offer. And so that's my take on all this.
Councilman Nick?
I believe what is outlined here as deliberative process method I think the staff has done a great job outlining how we can go about this. It seems to be the most methodical way to go about this, so I don't understand why the difficulty in deciding which method to go. To me, it's a no-brainer, but I defer to you 3. So, Thank you.
Yes. Yep. Mayor Pro Tem.
I agree with Dwight 100% on interviewing all 12. They all took the opportunity to apply, and I think that's a common courtesy. And I 100% agree that there are some people real good at taking written tests, and some are real good at taking oral. And so I've been through all the paperwork, in fact, some of them 3-4 times. I didn't quite get what somebody was saying, but I still want to talk to the person. I don't know all these people. Some of them I know because we all live in the same city and they've been through or something. But I want to be able to get a feel for them. I'm a woman, so I have to work with some of my instincts on top of the knowledge and everything else. I want that. And I'm very grateful that for all 12 of the applicants, I thank you for going through the process that we have and being so precise and giving us what we want. Some gave more and some gave less. But I feel that if we have 12 people, each one should get their 3 to 5 minutes at the mic. And we should have an opportunity for if there's anything that we're not clear on. There were several applications that I think I knew what they meant, but it wasn't really precise. I don't want to second guess them. I would be able to ask them because it would have a bearing on my decision. And so the thing is, when you try to, if we're hiring a contractor or something, I say, okay, let staff cut that list down, or consultant. But this is something where we're taking and voting for our citizens. We're literally taking the vote, and we are going to do the vote for them. And it's a lot different than in an election, because people get a chance to meet them at the store and curse them, or they know them or whatever. So if we're going to take this big of a responsibility on ourselves, we're going to have to sacrifice a day. Start 5:30 on Tuesday and try and get it through before 12 midnight. 12 midnight, I'll turn into a pumpkin. I got to go home, But I don't have a problem with it. Some people may not be able to come on the early part. I do feel that we may have to go out of the exact order, because some people may work and can't come as early, and some people may need to come, be last or something like that. I think staff can work with staff and ask them, shift them around. But I do want to speak to, I want to hear every one of them at that mic, and I want their paperwork that I've got notes. I didn't bring my packet. I got my stickers and notes on there, and I don't want to lose them. And I want to go with my notes and anything I want to ask whichever one. I do want to do that. That's all a part of it. And then, when I finish, I hope and pray that I'm able to make a decision, because there are some people that are excellent, and you go, which one? And I don't know at this time, but that would be the finishing on it, and then I'll have to put the cherry on the top after and put the ice in it by listening to them.
I too like the 3 to 5 minute, maybe 3 minutes is what each of you have to come before us and present your public comment to us. I think 5 minutes is a fairer thing for a candidate, and then it's our due diligence. And I assure you, everybody, I have already read everybody's applications, and I want to thank everybody for participating in and filling out the paperwork, the 700 forms and the resume. I know it was a lot of work, and we do appreciate it, because it was something that you guys have given us to get a little glimpse of what you are. But I think that coming before us, I think everybody should have the right to come before us, and maybe 5 minutes, and then 5 minutes of questions, answers by the council. Would that be fair?
Mr. Members of the council, that would be about a 10-minute turn. I think that would be well within the budget that you would perhaps put out for that evening to get done fairly soon. If you think about it, takes a little bit of time to come into the room, a little sort of issue. So if you stay within 15 minutes, I think you'd get done at a reasonable time.
And it's shifting the people in and out the room, even with the planning commissioners and the rec commissioners. When you have them come in the room, we need a faster process on that.
Well,
the dead time from the person that just spoke to the person that comes in uses up some of the time, and we're going to have 12 people, so you're going to have to work out something.
Well, Mr. Members of the Council, and we haven't talked about this as staff yet, but okay, I'll dangerously just talk off the top of my head here a bit, but
Go right ahead.
we're not asking the council to ask everybody the same questions. We're not generating those.
no, we're not gonna do
I'm
that.
not sure it's important for people necessarily to hear the others' interviews, but we'll talk about that in our staff report to you. We'll clarify how that process would work, as we're sensitive to the time frame in between candidates. But we'll give some thought to that and articulate it to you.
Now, I'm not for us having everyone in here. I
understand that. I'm just saying we ought to look at the whole thing, and then we'll
But I don't
make
want
a recommendation.
that dead time uses up the
Right.
time, because we're going to have 12 people. I don't want that gap, because it takes a time for them to come, and we're waiting and waiting and waiting. Then finally they come, and then, we got another. I don't want that kind of lapse, because it's not where we got to ask the same thing this time, because there are things on their application that I would like some clarity on. There's things on their application, some left off the application, and I want to know why you didn't. When some got them, I had a couple of them, they didn't understand what we asked, because their answer didn't match what we were asking. So I feel in due diligence, they should have the opportunity to clarify that. And if they still didn't get it, then that tells me something also. So I want our time to be used productively and not waste any of the time.
So to your staff putting this together, I think we got consensus on interviewing everybody. And do we have a consensus on 5 minutes for opening?
For the person?
Yeah.
I'm kind of partial to 3, because they got all the stuff in here in that way and give us more time to ask for clarity. If you want 5, I can go with it, but
I'm okay with 5. They don't need to use it. And the one thing that I think all the candidates should recognize is that we have. I'll speak for myself, but it sounds like everyone has thoroughly gone through the packets. So my suggestion, my strong suggestion, would be don't reiterate what you've already written. If there's something in addition to that you'd like to talk to us about, that's what that 3 to 5 minute period of time would be for. And again, don't feel like you need to use all the time. Some people might score extra points for being quick.
Oh, 4 is a good compromise. Right, I have a compromise for you. What about 4? Because the longer time you give people, many of people, they're going to think they should use all that time, and they're going to get to repeating themselves. Because the ones that wrote really good, they don't have to do a lot of talking. Their application speaks for itself, but they'll feel they should do more talking. So can we compromise and knock off 1 minute? That's 4, and give us some more time to ask. Because I got several that I have a lot of clarity that I'm going to need. And I want to do justice by them and not run out of time.
That's fine by me.
4?
Friendly amendment.
Thank you.
It's been accepted.
We got to vote?
No, I think we need
No, I have to
consensus.
vote.
Okay. Well,
She
all
says
in
yes, she wants to
favor?
vote. Aye.
Unanimous.
Aye.
Okay.
Back to the original.
Now back to the schedule. We have Tuesday the 10th or Wednesday the 11th. I have some stuff scheduled, so I'm hopeful that we can get done on Tuesday the 10th. I'm already. Many of you know that I work for State Assemblyman Don Wagner, and he's having a huge holiday get-together gathering at a car museum tonight, and I'm here. And first event that I've missed from my boss, but I'm sickened that they're at a car museum
You'll be there a little
with
bit.
69 Chevelles and Mustangs and Super Sports, and I'm not there. So, could I get consensus that we maybe start on Tuesday the 10th?
Yeah, let's start at 5:30 then.
5:30.
Yeah, 5:30. So it'd be a good chance to get them out with the option of continuing it to the next night if we have a person that's not.
Okay.
Is that a part of
It
it?
is an option. We will
Okay.
keep the option open to, if we need to, we will continue this. And so I think that's the clarity staff needs.
Now you have the process. We didn't take that issue.
Are we?
On how many times you're going to vote and vote, so you're going to get back to us on that
Mr.
before
Members of
Tuesday?
the council, what I think the staff would envision is that you'd have a ballot much like you do with the commission appointments that you've done in the past, but we would have the clerk read the votes as they're taken. All right, so you all vote, turn in the ballot. The clerk will read that. If you have a successful appointment, then obviously that will be evident, and she would announce that. You may want to think about at least 2 or 3 ballots in which you would include all candidates, I think. And at that point, if you felt like you needed a method by which to start to reduce the field, then I think we would come back with a recommendation on how you could do that in our staff report that we'd send.
But I'd like to keep, because I really don't know, except a few, I'd like to maybe keep the poll, because there are so many good candidates in here that with 3, with everybody, maybe then if no one had received a vote by 3, is that what you're...
That's what I think we're suggesting at this point. Let the staff give some thought to that with the attorney. Then we will send you an agenda for this meeting next week, and we'll outline a process. But right now, off the top of our head, I think what we would contemplate is that you'd leave all 12 candidates for 3, and then start a process where you would narrow it down. And there becomes a point where it's clear you either have someone that you've appointed, or you're just almost at impasse. In which case, then at that juncture, you may decide to finish for this evening and then come back the next day, or other options, including, obviously, the council could still call for a special election if that's something that you felt like you needed to do. But you'd have those options available if you win a couple more and still weren't able to get there.
May I vote? May I?
Yeah, Councilman, yeah.
Mr. Donick, if I may beg of you, the impasse is exactly what I'm concerned about, and that we're doing this at the 11th hour, and I just don't like to do things last minute. Can I, and again, the impasse is what I'm concerned about, and that is why I suggested that we go with the deliberative process method. So we talked about the length, we talked about the schedule. Can I beg of you to, it'll take me 10 times it would take you to share with my colleagues what the benefits of this method is. Can I beg of you to just recap this, so maybe we can decide on that at this very point, as opposed to it still lingering? It's a third method in this
Yes, it's a deliberative process that we identified in which you create tiers of candidates, and the process would be one in which each member of the council would place an individual in Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3, but we're also identifying for you that you would not be able to duplicate someone else's process, so that you emphatically have 4, 4, and 4. You wouldn't want 2 council members to place an individual in Tier 1 together, right? Then you'd only end up with 3. So given that process, obviously, if you arrived at, after interviewing only Tier 1, if you did that and came to a conclusion that there is an individual of those 4 that 3 of you at least want to appoint, then you'd be finished. You wouldn't be interviewing Tier 2 or Tier 3. If you were unable to accomplish an appointment after 1 or 2 ballots under Tier 1, then you'd probably interview Tier 2 and see if there is a candidate there, and successively, obviously, with Tier 3. The benefit of that clearly is it advances the process to where the more likely candidates are going to rise to Tier 1 and may give you more of an ability to see a consensus gel in that process. But you could do some modification in which you interviewed everybody, and then, for example, if you go through 2 or 3 rounds of balloting after looking at the entire list, and you are unable to arrive at a candidate, in other words, you're getting to impasse, then you could invoke that deliberative process and then create the tiers at that point, and then start again. So you could do that combination, Councilmember Nick, or you could start with a deliberative process. What I'm hearing from council right now is you want to interview everyone. So I think it already is a little different than what that alternative was that we identified. But it is one that if you got to impasse, rather than throwing in the towel, as it were, you could try that deliberative process at that juncture and see if you could get 4 people onto a tier, and then take that vote as well. Obviously, we're all hopeful that the candidate that all of you think is the best is going to be one that you all can support, and we'll have someone and not have to worry about impasse. But that is a possibility, so we do need to be concerned. But right now, that would probably, off the top of my head, be something you'd want to consider doing if you get through 2 or 3 and you're not getting anywhere.
So, in other words, in the case of an impasse, this is something we can always resort to as the so-called last option. This is something that we can preserve and still resort to at last.
I believe you could. I'd look to the city attorney if there's anything barring that.
Oh,
but
right.
I think your alternatives at that point, and I sense this from council, because you've articulated it before, and that is if your option is obviously go to an election or start this deliberative process, you may want to give the deliberative process a try before you'd go to the election.
Right, so
that's what I think I'm kind of sensing from all of you. So I think you could do that that evening.
As long as it's not going to be too late and we can do it, great. Thank you, sir.
My fear with that process is that if we all put down the same candidate, would that ensue that you guys would have to come back to us, tell we had to remove one of my first tier candidates because such and such or it's already been chosen? I would have to pick a...
Yeah, I think what we sort of envisioned with that is you would, honestly, you'd start with a member of the council. They would put somebody in tier 1. Then the next council member would have their chance. Obviously, you're going to hear who the first person was put in, and you just couldn't duplicate that individual. So you'd go in succession. You wouldn't do it.
So we actually could, after 3 rounds of, if we don't come up with a candidate, put them in tiers, because that way we've heard everybody. That way we've read and we've seen you before us. It would give us the best inclination of what kind of candidate or what kind of council member that would be.
I think if you interviewed everyone and then you did a round of balloting, and you did that 2 or 3 times, and it was clear you're not really making any progress, you might sense if there was some movement in the process on the second ballot, and okay, let's go to a third one, and then there isn't really, then you may want to go to that deliberative process. And what we would envision is it's a verbal sort of live action here where Councilmember Nick puts the person in tier 1, and then Mayor Pro Tem McCullough does, not duplicating the first. And you do that live. That way you create the tier, and then you would all ballot according to tier 1. But that's after you are unable to get to a conclusion. Right. Yeah.
Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you for explaining it, but there's a component that I didn't hear clarity on. When you're putting these 4 on the tier, and each one, that's 4 people, is putting a person in, how does it work if a person chooses to abstain? Because if there is no one left that I feel that I want, I'm not going to put someone in there. I am not going to vote for someone I'm not comfortable with. And so, say Councilmember Dwight, Councilmember Nick, and Mayor Voigt has taken the people that I would put in tier 1, then I would abstain. Now, I need to know how the process would work then.
I would think you could do that.
I would gladly allow her to second my candidate.
Good
No, I'm saying all 3 of you have 3 people, a different person, because remember, in the deliberative,
I understand.
you cannot have the same person. And I heard you say that distinctively.
Right.
So that means that if we could not have the same person, all 4 of us would have to have a different person. And if no one that I would want to be in tier 1 is available, then the 3 of them would each have a different person, but I would abstain from putting a person in there.
In that instance, then
So
balloting
how
would
would it
ensue.
operate then?
Balloting would ensue voting for the 3 who are in the tier. That's what would occur.
But
So
I
you would
was-
not have a candidate.
I wouldn't have a candidate, but I
you
still would
could
be
vote.
able to vote for one of the
Yes.
3 candidates.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's what, yes,
Just
that's what we
making
would
sure I
envision.
understood the process.
Right, you just would not have a candidate in the
No. I'm not going to put someone in if I'm not comfortable with them, and you know that. So I'm just trying to find out, will I still have my vote?
Right.
Okay? That's all I want to know. Just making sure. Thank you.
So on that item, do we have enough clarity, direction?
The city clerk looked at me and said yes. So I agree with her. I believe we do. So you'd be calling a special meeting of the city council for Tuesday, December 10th at 5:30. We're going to interview all 12 candidates, 4 minutes for their presentations, and then followed by questions by council. And we'll send out an agenda to that effect.
For you that have applied for the city position, thank you for coming. Thank you for being so diligent and question and answering the 700 forms and that. And you get it hot from us Tuesday, the 10th at 5:30. Yes, ma'am.
Mayor, there was something that Dwight had mentioned that I didn't hear folded into our city manager's comment, and I agreed with it. That's why I'm catching it, Dwight, is that Dwight had stated concerning, excuse me, I'm having a senior moment. When you said it, it hit, and I just lost it in my weight. But would you repeat what you just said, if you can? When you said what we were going to do?
You're going to call a special meeting of the council for...
Oh, hold on, I got it.
Okay.
Let me get it before I forget it. And he was, he was saying, make sure that the candidates know that it could be continued to the next, to finish up the next day. Make sure you have it noted that if not completed, it would continue to the next day.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we'll do that. And
But you didn't say it.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay.
What also, just so I guess it would be clear, the city clerk would be calling the candidates and then arranging interview times for them so they have a set time. And as you were articulating earlier, Mayor Pro Tem McCullough, maybe someone needs to get here after a job and would go later than earlier. So we'll make sure that they understand all of those potentialities in that conversation so they're ready for it on Tuesday night.
Thank you.
Agenda item 11, request for appointment, League of California Cities, Association of California Cities, Orange County, and/or the Orange County City Selection Committee, submitted by City Clerk.
Has there been any?
There are no new announcements.
Okay, that brings us to
Agenda item 12, selection of mayor and mayor pro tem for the ensuing year, submitted by City Clerk.
Considering we're all here of just coming through the process and the date for us to fill our council seat, I would make a motion that we postpone this until the 17th when we have a full council, hopefully.
I second that.
Second?
Aye.
And with that, brings us to the city manager's report.
I have nothing further this evening, Mr. Mayor.
And Councilman Nick.
I thank everyone for being here tonight. I wish you all a great evening.
Councilman Robinson.
Well, my bet was the meeting was going to be over at 8:30, so I'm going to talk for about 2 minutes. So that, no, I'm just kidding. I have nothing further this evening. Thanks for being here.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Hopefully,
I know she has something.
hopefully everybody had a happy Thanksgiving, and I need to do my AB 1234. I attended OCOG and Orange County Fire. Outside of that, I ate all the turkey I wanted. It's fat-free.
And for those of you that don't come here regularly, that's a record right there. So we rejoice for that. There must be the happy holiday season. I'd like to say Before I get started.
Right. For all of you that follow the policy that I have for myself of not contacting me or having anyone to solicit me concerning our election, I want to thank you. For all you that did not keep my record, shame on you. You can't get that. You can't get to me like that. And for all of you that have been praying for my husband and my daughter, I really appreciate it. My daughter's not doing very well tonight. She hasn't made the decision of what method she's going to use to remove the tumor, even though it's cancerous. And my husband, he's doing fair. Not really well, but fair. But keep up the prayers, and thank you. And please pray for me to have more energy, because I'm running out of steam. Thank you.
With that, I'd like to say that Doctors Ambulance Service has a program for senior citizens, those that are disabled, and it's called Home for the Holidays. You can call Doctors Ambulance and schedule a loved one to be driven free of charge to a loved one's house for Christmas or Christmas parties, and it's a great service to our community, and I just wanted to make a shout out to that. This weekend at Heritage Hill, it's really a gem for us here in Lake Forest. It's something that we're really blessed to have with the 150-year-old Serrano El Adobe House, the Bennett Ranch House, the El Toro Schoolhouse, and the first church here in Saddleback Valley, which was the Episcopal Church. And I got to say that they're having the Victoria Christmas this Saturday. It's something that you all should come visit. And the week after that, they have their candlelight Christmas service out. So it's a wonderful place to come and get into the Christmas spirit. There'll be carolers out dressed in early century costume. And it's well worth the going there. It's a beautiful place. The Lake Forest Chamber of Commerce is having their holiday mixer December 11th. That's what I wanted to go to. I can't miss my holiday chamber mixer. So at the 10th, we have to get you guys seated by the 10th. December 11th, hopefully we'll all be at the Lake Forest Chamber Holiday Mixer at Lucille's Smokehouse Barbecue, starting at 5:30. So with that, I hope everyone had a blessed Thanksgiving, and I wish you a very blessed Hanukkah and Christmas and a blessed New Year. So thank you, and I close the meeting.